Verses 45 through 47. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and He will give all of you into our hands." Fill in blank number 2, David makes his declaration. David makes his declaration. Goliath, in his accusations and in his pride, it was all about him. Little H-I-M. With David, when he made his declaration, it was all about him. Capital H-I-M. Let me ask you a question. Whose name did David walk onto the battlefield in? I saw someone's mouth go. The Lord's name. Who will hand Goliath over to David? The Lord. Who had Goliath defiled? After all this is said and done, after the battle is over, who does David say the whole world will know about? Will they know about David? Will they know about King Saul? Will they know about their incredible army that they have? No way. David is ferociously attached to giving glory to God. David mocks even the mere weapons that men use and points to the ultimate victor. Who will give him victory? Will it be his measly little sling and stone? It may be a vehicle, but ultimately the person who's going to get the glory for this win is going to be God and God alone. So, let's get right down to the battle. Verses 48 through 51. Verses 48 through 51. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and they ran. Fill in the blank number 3. These are the 4 keys to giant victory. The 4 keys to giant victory. You can write them down. I'll dig into each one. David ran, he reached, he rocked, and he rolled. David ran, reached, he rocked, and rolled. David ran. David did not hesitate. David didn't walk onto the battlefield and go, woo. Now remember, David was facing a guy this big. And David was just a little guy. And he ran at him. Everything that he had seen in his family and friends was run away from that giant. He was hardwired as a little kid to run away from big stuff. But David ran because he was committed all the way. There was no compromise. Either he gets the giant or the giant gets him. And news to the giant is, he's going to get the giant. Now, if there's a giant in your life, you'll always be running in one of 2 directions. You will either be running for your giant or you'll be running from your giant. And friend, if you don't have God, you better run from Him. Because He's going to squash you. Now here's the thing though. You're always going to be running. And eventually that giant is going to catch you. and he's going to kill you. But if you have God, you can run for him. And as you run for him, you'll see what happens next. This is when he reached into his pouch. He reached in to pull out a stone. He was prepared with all that he had to meet Goliath. Now, why did he have 5 stones? Scholars have debated that. They have this neat theory that Goliath potentially had 4 relatives in the Philistine army. So David thought, Goliath and his 4 relatives. How about 1 stone each? He prepared. Now, this is where it gets a little crazy. Because no one thought he was prepared. No one thought you'd go against the giant with 1 stone, let alone 4 other giants. But David prepared as much as he could. Again, all you have is all God needs to succeed. Knowing that God will take care of the rest, he was prepared as he went into battle that day. It reminds me a little bit of that little boy who was on the hillside that day with Jesus. As the 5,000 people stood there hearing Jesus' teaching, and then when it was all over, Jesus wanted to send them home, but he didn't want to send them home hungry. And the giant of hunger stood there. Well, how are we going to meet that giant? We don't have any food, except this little kid. Look what he's got. A few fish and a few loaves of bread. But in Jesus' hand, the power of God came into that little bit that the boy had and fed 5,000 people. Friend, what do you have to fight your giant? Do you believe that God can use what you have to destroy the giant that is dominating and intimidating you today? Are you ready to bring it, no matter how small, to fight your giant? Reaching for whatever resources you have, believing that God can multiply or magnify the effect for his glory. Then we see David rocked. Now, friends, it's really pretty easy. It was easy for David to go down to the stream and pull that rock out of the stream and put it in his pouch. It's easy to get prepared. It's easy to get educated and trained to do something and to even read books about how to face your giant. Go to seminars, be in groups, but at the end of the day, are you going to take a shot? Are you actually going to swing that thing and bring your giant down? You know, David could have prayed, "Oh Lord, please miracle this rock upside his head. I'm not a very good aim, Lord. Help me. Do the work for me, Lord." And sometimes there's a careful balance between how much we do and how much God does. But I believe in this case, and in many cases, we have to step forward and we actually have to try and knock out that giant. It reminds me of the man of faith who was caught in the flood. And when the water got up to the door, a raft came by. And he said, no, I don't need to ride. God's going to save me. And then the water went up to the windows, and a boat came by. And the people said, get on the boat. And he said, no, God's going to save you. And then the water went up to the roof, and a helicopter came by. And they said, get on the helicopter. And he said, no, God's going to save you. Well, the waters came up, the man drowned, and he ended up in hell. And he turned to God and said, why didn't you save me? And God said, I sent you a raft, I sent you a boat, and I sent you a helicopter. Why didn't you get on? Friend, sometimes, especially when facing giants, we have to put forth effort. You know what? Every time we face giants, we have to put forth effort to bring them down. What is God asking you to do? Many times He wants us to be a part of His miracles so that we can be first-hand witnesses to God's power. So that we can say, do you see? God did it. I was there. I saw it happen. It wasn't me. It was Him.